Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another live stream from Nonstop Dogwear. Today, our guest is Ben Robinson. You are the world champion in Canicross, and you have the unofficial world record as well on both 5 kilometers and 1 kilometer. Before we start, I would like to tell you that everyone that's asking questions during this live stream, they can win some of our brand new products. We have just released twin shorts. It's a bit hard to see. I will get back to them later. And the tech tee. So if you leave a question for Ben during this live stream, you can win a t-shirt. But Ben, maybe you can start by introducing yourself.
Yeah, so my name's Ben Robinson. Hopefully a lot of you know me, and for those that don't, I'm a Canicross competitor from Great Britain. I first competed in Canicross in 2014 and have been heavily involved in the sport since that point. And as Jeanette's already touched on, I've been lucky enough and honoured to win 2 world titles now, so current reigning 2-time world champion in the sport.
How did you get into Canicross?
So originally, I was a runner. I've been a runner since my teenage years. I had a little bit of a break and then had to come back into the sport. And part of managing some previous injuries, I'd found success with going off-road with my training and going on to softer surface to run on. So even slightly softer surfaces like a lot of canal towpaths and then sort of fire track trails, and then of course grass sessions as well. And we had a pet dog who didn't run. She unfortunately had some hip issues, so she could never have come with me and never ran. But we were looking for a companion dog for both her at home as a pet, and also at that point I thought it'd be nice to get a dog that I could accompany me with my own training and my own running. And at that point in time, that's literally all I thought it would be. I didn't know about the sport, never heard about it. It was just going to be a dog to run with me, so mostly off lead. Which I did start doing. But then I learned of the sport just literally reading a magazine from, for those in the UK who know it, from like Pets at Home. It's just a pet store basically in the UK, and we've just gone there, grabbed a free magazine, read in there that you could compete in this sport, cross-country running with dogs. And it was as simple as that. That's where I first learned of it. And I kind of took the view that, you know, I was fit as an athlete myself. I was a runner. My dog was obviously a fit dog just from the off-lead running, and was active and healthy. And it was really just putting those two things together and giving it a go as to how we'd get on. So bought a start kit, had obviously literally a couple of training sessions just getting used to the kit. Obviously no experience, didn't run with any other athletes. So it was just a case of learning together, and then just rocked up to a race, thought we'd give it a go. We won the first race, we won our debut race in the UK, and then just didn't really look back from there, just kept going. By the end of the season, had a British title to add to that as well.
What's the biggest difference, do you think, from running with the dog and running without the dog?
So I would probably say like the technical aspect in terms of the braking at points. Like obviously when you run yourself, obviously you're always putting the power down based on the terrain that you're on. And you can obviously regulate that. So if you're coming to a downhill section, if you're coming to a corner, you're obviously not going to run into that super hard. But as a lot of us know, with a motivated and well-trained dog, often they don't slow down. I know some people have success certainly with the hills, but a lot of time corners being sprung on us, they're not going to slow. So there is an element of us having to physically therefore break back and slow the dog and slow ourselves to get through the course safely. So it's probably physically, I would say it's that. The actual on good terrain is probably just more like my faster track running. So if I'm running a 5K with a dog, you know, my effort, my technique might be more like running a 400 to an 800 meters. So obviously more use my arms, more sprint sort of technique. But I would say that the big difference is probably the ability to brake. So, you know, using a lot of your posterior chain, lower limb muscle groups, and having to control your pace.
And I've seen you run at the World Championships in Sweden a couple of years ago, and your downhill running is quite impressive. Do you have some tips for other runners how to manage to do the downhill better?
Yeah, I don't know if my tips would be safe to give to other people. I've always followed just absolutely leg it on the downhills. I know there's a difference of opinion on this, but I suppose what I would say is, I think you can make time there if we're talking about sprint racing and you're prepared to take a little bit of a risk. I think it's a lot in a sprint race if you're going to lose time on those hills if you really break the dog back. I think you're losing too much, but of course you need to be safe and run within your capabilities. So I would say, train with the dog and go as fast, obviously, as you can. And it's about a big leg turnover, very fast leg turnover. But just practice, you should know, obviously, what your max speed is. There will come a point where turning the legs over that quick is just going to get too much for you. And the increased risk of a fall is going to be too great, which, of course, could put you out of the race altogether. But I do try and maximize what I can gain on the downhill. So a lot of training with it. Lot of track work away from with the Canicross, so that your speed, your leg turnover you've worked on, because that's obviously a safer way of working on it than doing a lot of downhill running with the dog, because you probably feet are going to take a bit of a hammering. So a lot of speed work and then a little bit of practice with the dog downhill and sort of finding your max for that.
Now it's been only like 1.5 years since COVID. The pandemic hit and lots of competition has been cancelled and everything, but you still managed to stay motivated through all this time, and you actually set some records as well on 1K. I think, was it 2:04 on 1 kilometer?
Yeah, 2:04. Yeah.
How did you manage to stay motivated through this tough time?
It's been very tough as for everyone. I think the first year, obviously, there was so much unknown in terms of, was it going to be a short period of time we were affected for, or was it going to be longer? So obviously, I was trying to stay fit, keep the dogs fit, and hope that we'd get a competition. As we went on, obviously, it became evident that probably wasn't going to be the case. So that first year, I think I really focused on fast running. The virtual stuff came out, and in non-stop, obviously, we did a bit of it as well. So it was a chance to really try and, I guess, get those records down. There's a slight difference when you're preparing for competition. You can't always be hammering, trying to run really, really fast. Obviously, you need to peak for those competitions, and there's a big energy cost and recovery time if you do run that hard and that fast. So a lot of the time in a season with championships, I can't always afford to do that. So I took the opportunity to just prepare solely to run fast, not having to worry about tapering down to a specific race, and had success with that. So the first lockdown year, with, as you say, 1K, 2:04, and I also ran a new personal best over 5K of 12:09, both with my homebred own dog, Zuma, son of Blake, that most of you will be familiar with from the World Championship victories. And then the second year, so this year really has been, I guess, the polar opposite. A lot of the virtual stuff slowed a little bit, I think, this year again, as we were maybe wondering whether we'd get competition again or not. And I've just done the opposite, really. So I've come away from it a little bit to have a bit of a refresh, a bit of a break, just, enjoy the dogs as pets, do more free running with them, alongside my own running, and then a little bit more focus on that, my own running that I don't get always a chance to do at certain points of the season because of the dog prep stuff. And just try to refresh so that I'd equally come back ready to go, I'm wanting to race again, really.
And season is just about to start, but you just recovered from being sick from COVID-19 as well. How do you start training again after being sick?
I did. Was unlucky, if you like, to catch COVID, but equally was lucky enough that for myself and for my family, it wasn't anything too severe. I know cases have obviously ranged massively on that front, but we were lucky enough it wasn't a severe illness. So for myself, it was, I guess, only like a bad cold, mild flu type illness. So really, just as I would have before, just take time to rest, obviously, at that period in time, because any sort of illness that's coming onto the chest and that, it's never a good idea to exert yourself heavily. Took the time to recover, obviously was forced on me as well a little bit with the nature of this illness, being that you're, down at home, obviously alone. And then really just a slow return. So just adjusted some race plans a little bit. I had a few races, that I just dropped off the schedule that weren't sort of important races to me. Took a little bit longer to just have a little bit of rest, some easy running, and just really like a between seasons sort of transition period, if you like, from ended my track season a tiny little bit early, so that I could have that, and then just looking to get back into sort of moderate and then harder running towards the mid and end of September, ready for sort of a cross season, and of course the best part back with the dogs for the Canicross season as well.
What's your main goal this season?
My main goal this season would probably be the British Championship. So that's probably going to be early 2022 now for us over here. I think obviously still up in the air a little bit in terms of the international championships. But again, if they come off in the spring, then alongside those as well. You know, I've always been motivated by that, by the championships, by the championship record of myself and my dogs. So they'd be the main ones. As it stands, obviously the British Champ's confirmed, and hopefully that everything stays, you know, good for that to go ahead. And then those international championships, if we're lucky enough to get them in the spring.
We have some questions coming in here from Eliana. What qualities do you look for when choosing a Canicross puppy prospect?
Yeah. So for me, I've always looked for like confidence in the pup. So I think that with the sport we do, obviously being Canicross, I know sometimes some competitors, athletes do two dog, but predominantly it's obviously a single dog sport. So I think the number one quality that you need, certainly from a young age, is obviously a confident pup. Of course, there's some physical qualities, but they would differ. I mean, I've got a massive range. Those of you that know my dogs will know that I don't necessarily go for one type physically. I like the dogs to be able to do a wide variety of distances that obviously I run. So what's suitable, maybe the best for 3 to 5K is not necessarily the best for 10K plus. So physically it could differ. Obviously bigger dogs for the sprint stuff, bigger, stronger dogs, and then a leaner dog with more sort of endurance lines for the longer stuff. But yeah, certainly mentally, I just look for that dog that looks confident to do its own thing. And just then the one that you bond with, you know, I also think all of them are pets at home. So, you know, you've got to feel that love for that dog and think that dog's got a connection with you. And if you can get that, any signs of that at an early stage, then even better, you know.
Good. And we got question in advance as well from Wisla Max Runs. How do you train outside Canicross to enhance your Canicross performance?
So touched on it a little bit, obviously earlier. It would certainly be a stronger focus on speed work. So overall, a lot of running on my own. If I'm honest, limited Canicross, just purely because the effect of that, certainly with strong dogs as well. If I Canicross, I'm probably in recovery for kind of 2 to 3 days. With again what I touched on earlier in terms of like the break-in. If I've ran them cross country, you know, muscles are aching. Need to take easier running days, and then if I do that over a long period of time in preparation for the season, it's just too much time recovering, not enough time training. So I'll train the dogs more maybe on wheels, and then I would train like a full, if you like, run program. Obviously I do that partly for that reason, secondly because I've always been involved in athletics, so still enjoy that as well, like my own solo running. But then I do all seasons, so track, road, cross country, but with a slight shift in focus towards the speed element. So even though I probably view myself as more of a 5 to 10K runner, certainly in the track season when I can, I train with a group and some guys who are more kind of 8-15 runners, just because I think that element and leg turnover and speed work is going to help transition me into Canicross a little bit more.
And if you want to know more about how Ben is training, we also did a podcast with him before. We will post a link in the comments to the episode where you go more into detail about how you're training. We have a question as well from the Tilma. How do you motivate your dogs?
I mean, now, like where obviously they're trained, like they don't need much motivation. I can move in the house and they're ready to go. But earlier on, if they're at all unsure, you know, it would be using the use of obviously the senior dogs, the dogs that know what they're doing. So make sure from an early age, even before they can run, take them to training. let them see it, let them see that excitement, because it definitely rubs off. I've seen behaviors 100% rubbed off from senior dogs when they pick up on that. Even loading them at home into the van, they're learning that that's something good, something exciting. Then obviously watching training and running specifically. And also early on, if you haven't got that, if you've only got a single dog and so on, train with others. So you get with other people, other dogs. They definitely will instinctively try and chase, run with a dog, even if you then need to train the finer things like passing and ignoring and going on and all these things. Ultimately, getting with other people, other dogs, whether they are experienced in the sport or not, dogs will want to run with dogs, So I think, get with other people, certainly until they're a little bit more experienced, and then do some sessions on your own, of course, and then jump back in, alternate the two so they can kind of still learn to run on their own and pick that excitement up. But I think other dogs, number one thing.
And I remember you also talking about keeping the training sessions short so we don't overdo it and the dog won't get too exhausted and have a negative experience.
Absolutely, yeah. With young dogs, obviously, as those experienced in the sport will know, as they're older and more experienced, we can start to push them a little bit more. They will understand that they're going to get tired, and they will still want to run even when they are tired. But with a young dog, I would always be stopping when they're not too tired physically, and certainly mentally are still pulling. If you've gone too far, if they're sort of being distracted because you've just had them out there too much time. So try and keep it short and end on a positive, and then you can always increase gradually on the next sessions.
That sounds good. Another question. My dog gets distracted while running. Do you have any training tips?
Again, a little bit like we just said, using other dogs can help massively. The short running that we've just said can help massively. I mean, try and pick up maybe if there's a particular thing that is distracting the dog. Obviously, if you can identify that, then you can work on it probably with more success, and by that, I mean, I'd take it also away from the distraction and teach it to run more, be more excited, to run with more success, but then equally adding that distraction back in, but maybe when you've got the help of others. So if that X, distracts the dog, then I would only go to that distraction when maybe you've got everything else right. So you've got the dogs to maybe chase, and then maybe keep your sessions where you haven't got that help or haven't got that support to without the distraction, and then sort of put the two together, obviously further down the line.
Good. A question from Fia Alexandra. Your best advice to get faster as a runner?
So as a runner on your own, number one, consistency. So there's obviously a load of things. I could talk about this for a long time. And like Jeanette said, the training podcast, we do touch on a bit more. But consistency is the number one. So many people just don't try hard enough for long enough. They maybe think it's not working. Or think that even if training weeks, they're quite similar. There'll be periods of time in the year where that's exactly what they should be, whether it's like a base period where you're doing a lot of miles to build that base and build that endurance and strength, or whether it's when you are ready for the speed work. It can feel like a long period of time and very minor changes to the training, but ultimately it will pay off. I've worked with a lot of athletes, coaching them and they maybe think, it's not coming together. And they'll tell you, that eventually it just does. It does click. Or if they've had little setbacks, little injuries, but then we've come back, and when you come back, they've been surprised at where they are in terms of condition, and it's just because of that underlying base work we managed to do, and that consistency. It's absolutely key. It'd be my number one thing. Just make sure you're consistent.
Do you have any speed specific training sessions with your dogs to increase their speed?
Yeah, I will do it. I would use, for outright speed, if we're talking sort of max speed, then I'd use the bike for it. Because as we touched on earlier, I wouldn't want to run, for example, downhill all the time, or even on a really fast fire track, flat, straight, trail, because it's just going to burn my feet up to the point I'm probably not going to be running for that week. So probably the bike for speed. Even obviously a flat bike without much help from you as an athlete, if you're not a cyclist, is going to be very, very speed orientated for a Canicross dog. It's going to be over speed work. And so I probably do that. If you, in terms of sort of sessions, I will occasionally do intervals. I don't necessarily do a load of them. I might do them early season when we're maybe building back up to fitness. And then I'd maybe do them as well, drop the distance down and do a speed work when we're maybe approaching the key competitions, so that there's not too much volume in there for the dog to recover from, and we're getting a little bit sharper, if you like. So a bit of a tune up before competitions. And then again, obviously, as either side of sort of those warmer months. So if it's maybe end of season, then maybe we drop back down to doing obviously something shorter and faster at that point in time.
We have another question from Peter. Do you prefer more single track running or open fire roads?
Peter's a good friend of ours and an organizer of a race here in the UK. And he's probably fishing for me to say that I absolutely love his course down in Plymouth. And a shout out for everyone to go down there over this season. His dates are out now. So yeah, no, Peter does do a great track, to be fair, down in southwest of England. With a lot of single track and a lot of climbing. He's kept that one quiet though, a lot of climbing there. But no, I do love single track. Of course, there's times for fire roads, like in terms of my tests and things where I've really gone for speed. That's been motivating for me to just do that and have max speed. But as an overall experience and just being out there with the dog and what I like to see at race courses, then it would probably be the more interesting route for the dog, and single track's a lot more exciting to run.
Mm-hmm. And Peter is one of the people that's asking questions here. And just to remind you guys that everyone asking questions, they can win some of our new products. I will try to show it to you. This is the Canicross Tech Tee. It's a technical t-shirt. It's very light and breathable. Ben, you've tried it a bit already. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I've been lucky enough to receive both the technical t-shirt that you've got there and the men's long tights so far of the new range. And I'm told by my wife that my shorts are literally waiting at home for me when I get home after this interview. So I'll try the shorts next. But yeah, love the t-shirt. Really, really light fabric, really breathable, going to be perfect for the hard sessions and the races that will come in the season. It's been great in the warm weather. But equally, like I say, once we're obviously into hard sessions and racing, I can't stand running in anything that feels heavy or hot. I'm sure it'll be excellent when we get drenched in the middle of a Canicross race as well, because it's just that light. So yeah, really, really good tee. I recommend it for everyone to have a try.
We're glad you're happy with it. And you haven't seen your shorts yet, but we have one here. It might be a bit hard to see. This is the Canicross twin shorts. It's a double layer shorts. It has leg grippers to prevent them from sliding up when you're running, and a wide waistband. It's really comfortable when you're running with a belt. And the pocket in the back is without zipper. You can put your leash in here or something else, and it still won't be uncomfortable when you're running with a belt. So if you want one of these, make sure to leave a comment and a question for Ben. We have another one from Hihu. How do you warm up and cool down yourself and your dog?
Okay, yeah. So for myself, I'd start as I've always done in athletics. So I'd follow my own sort of running warm up. So it would be a period of jogging, easy running with a slight progression. So start very, very slow and just slightly progress that to like an easy to steady run, no harder. Then I would go through a number of sort of running drills, again, following that kind of slow to fast movement pattern. So start with things like heel kicks, high knees, all of the sort of motion that you go through when you're running, but as a drill. And yeah, start with those slower ones and then move into sort of the fast ones. So again, you can really kick the knee up and that drive the arms and things just to get everything sort of ready to go. Concentrating a lot on breathing throughout so that you're, getting the air in and exhaling and that throughout that. And then for the dog, I don't do a huge amount of specific warm up with them because it's kind of a balancing act between obviously the fact that they know they're at an event, they know they're at the race. And if I get them out, they are going to try and run, I will not be able to get through to them. So try and walk with them, of course, and try and keep them calm. So generally I'll try and take them away from the race sort of environment if I can. Just walk out into the nearby forest or so if you can, and just walk around with them, keep them walking for a period of time, and then obviously maybe a little bit of manual, just warming around the muscles, bit of rubbing on the muscles, just to get them ready. But it's always a bit of a balancing act, because obviously you're trying to get you ready, you're trying to get the dog ready, you're trying to time it for being ready for the race, but what time, you've got to get over there, because the dog's very, very excited. So if you've got family member as a handler, walking the dog around is perfect. Then obviously you can push your warm up closer to the race. Ideally, obviously we would, as a human, we'd remain warm right up until that point to avoid injury risk. So obviously if you can do that, but if not, I just finish slightly earlier and then make sure the dog's at least warm prior and then go. But yeah, that's just sort of balancing the two, really.
What about feeding and hydration? We have a question here that's specifically for races in the afternoon.
Yeah, so for the afternoon, I would just probably use a tiny bit of food. So either a small amount of food. So, I would start thinking about hydration at least the day before. So add maybe a little bit more water than you usually would onto the food, maybe certainly from at least the night before, even for morning or afternoon races, would be, water that food. Water the first meal in the morning. At least the advantage you've got with the afternoon, although there are some obviously complications and things to manage in terms of how you get the dogs ready for that, and maybe slightly less common to what you're used to with the morning race. You can obviously afford to feed them. I would say if you're going to do that, make sure you've tried it obviously in training. So make sure you've ran them at that time for several weeks previous, and make sure you've nailed all these things down. But I would feed in the morning with water, and I'd probably only do light meals throughout the day, but then I would give even just a few drops of their food in it maybe a few hours later, so you've kept them hydrated that way. Or of course there are some of the products as well that you can use, like pre-run drinks. We use Mammut Dog Nutrition, and the dogs will normally be a bit happier to drink that than say water alone, when you've got to a point where you don't want to give any more food, so maybe a couple of hours before. What about yourself? Similar, to be fair, obviously, apart from adding it to the food. So I'd start the day before, throughout the day, just drinking a lot, and then the morning, straight away, I'd probably personally, like for me, it's something I've always done when I'm running. If I'm on sort of a race day, it's get up and it's just a pint of water, and I just take the pint of water straight away, so I know I'm ahead, and then sort of just carry on drinking throughout. Personally, I like to stop a good amount of time before, kind of 90 minutes to plus before. I would probably have stopped drinking, just purely because I don't like that feeling of sort of water in the stomach at all. So yeah, just like to have stopped in plenty of time, and obviously managing the toilet and so on before you're trying to do your warm up and the dogs and everything that you've got to do right before the race. But yeah, just drink all day, stay on it, stay hydrated. Be aware as well, obviously, to take on some form of drink with maybe like some electrolytes and salts in as well. Because if we're drinking a lot of water, then we can flush out some of those which are essential to obviously the body and performance. So just either a sports drink or juices and so on. And again, just like with the dogs, try it beforehand. Don't change something for the race. Different drinks are going to react with the body differently. Make sure gastro wise you're comfortable with the drink that you're drinking. So try it in training, replicate in training what you're going to try for the race.
That's some good advice. Another question here from Marie. You've touched on this a bit in the podcast episode we recorded with you earlier. There's a link in the comments here. But maybe you can give us a short recap. How many times a week do you train your dogs?
Yeah. So exactly like I touched on in the podcast. It's probably something I would aim in season that they're doing something kind of 6 days a week. So personally, for my dogs and for me, I've always followed the theory that I like a complete rest day for them. That is a rest day at home. So we don't leave home. They're just at home, pets, not encouraged to do anything strenuous. A couple of times I like to try and aim for at least twice. They'll be running as a group free with me, with my training, alongside my training. And then the rest of the week maybe depend on the time of the season. So out of season, I try and keep 1 to 2 times in there. And I'll try and keep that year round. The really hot weather we had, obviously I have to scrap that sometimes, and that doesn't happen. But if I can then get them extra sessions free, I'll sort of just replace them with free running early in the morning. But I would try and keep 1 to 2, obviously much shorter in the warmer weather, and we don't have any races to worry about. And then in season at the peak sort of times, it's probably up to 3 to 4 times a week. And then it's probably back down to kind of 1 to 2 in a build up to say key races. So just depends if we're sort of on a training period or sort of a maintenance kind of racing period. And then the other days, if I'm on the lower amount of harness training, I'll probably just walk. So simple, in the half harness, shoulder harness, lead walks. And I put them in there as strength training, really. So I still allow my dogs to pull on those walks, and they'll be, fairly short, maybe race distance in time. But it's just a strength workout on those days.
Another question. My dog is 40 kilos, and when I run, sometimes I feel his pulling power is way too strong. Do you think it's dangerous to do Canicross with such a big dog, or do you have any tips? I don't know how much your dogs are weighing.
So my dogs range from Nova European Hounds, probably around about either side of 20 kilos, depending on their condition. And then Nero is anything, again, depending on condition, but he's been as heavy as about 43. That was probably out of season, to be fair. He's probably a little under, 40 when he's fully race fit. So yeah, he's a big boy. I think is the dog too big? Too big probably is only relevant to, I guess, what an individual can control. So it would be hard to say a size is too big. And also it would be related heavily to their running speed and their power. So obviously, as an example for that, I never obviously seriously Canicrossed him, but we had a Mastiff who in his prime was 60 kilos. And he certainly was like 50 and so on. And look, at a field before, I've had him in a harness and jogged around him, but his power is nowhere near the power of the 30, 35 kilo dogs that are obviously running much faster. But if it's a 40 kilo dog that is a fast, motivated, fast dog, prepared to run, then yeah, it's going to be a lot to handle. Even like between myself, like I can run Nero comfortably. Even my father, for those of you that know, obviously competes with me as well. And, he is probably, it's fair to say, not so keen on running Nero versus some of the others. He's said at points, even small declines and stuff, Nero's had him over and stuff, he is a lot to handle. So yeah, probably quite an individual thing, hard to sort of specifically answer. The only other thing I'd say on danger is obviously be cautious on the course. Maybe, you probably obviously don't want to stop running the dog. And of course it's, not what any of us would want, but probably just be mindful of where you're going to do, know the route, know that there's not any really dangerous periods, particularly if you won't, very quickly stop if you give the command, and equally maybe train that, maybe put some time into training it. As I've said, I personally haven't put my time into training it, but it's partly because I kind of feel confident with the dogs to still run them full speed downhill, and also because obviously I'm trying to get those last sort of second or two on a course. But you could of course spend some time doing that, and it'd probably be good and allow you to run him in more places than you could otherwise.
Do you usually walk through the course before races, and what can you say a bit more about what you're looking for?
Yeah, always. Practically a golden rule of mine, I've got to see the course. On a few occasions I haven't, I've really not liked it, and never for a big competition, I've allowed it to happen. I've always been there, obviously days before really, and gone through it several times, walked it, for a general look, like as we all would, just, distance, terrain for footwear, any points to be mindful of, to know what's coming for you to sort of gauge your effort. Of course, looking for the specific dangers, any routes, anything that's slippery, all of these things to sort of be mindful of in the race. And then, of course, to pick your footwear that you're going to go in with, or in some cases, pick your dog. I'm obviously lucky, and I know some others are, to have multiple dogs that you could take on course, and they come with their own strengths and weaknesses. So you could even be picking dog. So all would always do it. Absolutely, we'd always look at course, and then we'd even run it. So probably have a jog around it. Again, you get a little bit more feel for how it feels. And I have been known to then either run it faster or in Sweden, actually, particularly at the last World Champ we were at, on the midweek, I ran it near full pace with Blake. Not quite full pace, but I think in the end, I think my times when I look back on my Strava and that were about maybe 20 seconds apart, 15, 20 seconds slower than what we'd ran race day. I'd gone through it on training on the Wednesday. So just that really full speed still in terms of an effort, just not pushing that last, couple of percent and really taking the chances on sections. But we'd gone through it at full speed because how it runs at full speed with a pulling dog is very different to how it feels when you jog around it. So if you can afford to, obviously that's easier at a competition you're at several days before. Obviously it's not an option for a competition that you rock up to on the weekend, but then I would at least walk it, and it maybe even if possible, incorporate it into your warm up as well as a jog.
Question from Evelyn: do I have to make correction of the dog if it's not pulling completely in line?
You don't have to. It depends obviously how severe we're talking. I would, if we're just talking like side of a trail and maybe they're just trying to pick a little bit of softer ground, if there's a little bit of grass to the side of the trail, I'd probably try and run fairly far over myself, as far over as I think safe, and sort of let them do that. Obviously if they're really severely pulling way away from you to one side, especially as you're then going to maybe lean towards taking another corner, then I'd probably try some, gentle persuasion to bring them over. If they're not responding to that in terms of commands and slight direction, sort of correction on the line, then obviously some of the things we talked about earlier, using a dog that maybe is very, very hot on the commands to be ahead, and then you could probably work that. And if you are doing anything like that, I always say, even in walking, or obviously if you were letting it follow an experienced dog, make sure you then double that up with giving the command you want it to do, so it's reinforcing that, and then hopefully you can put that back to doing the work on its own. So don't just let it veer back over and follow that dog. Make sure you're calling it to the right, for example, right, and it and obviously encouraging it and praising it if it does that, and then hopefully then you can transition back to that success on your own.
Good. A question from Paul: do you train or run longer distance in harness, like 10K or more, during the season or outside the season?
For my sprint dogs, probably not 10K. So for my sprint dogs, I would say the longest I probably, they all, if I'm racing them at 5K, I sort of have another golden rule that is kind of like, to have a dog really fit for 5K, I think they need to kind of do at least 6. They need to be able to do 6 to do 5 really well. So that would kind of be a given. If I'm racing them at 5 for performance, they can do 6 in training. I would like them to do more like the 7 to 8. So I'd probably put prep, unless they're maybe a dog that I think is not specifically suited to that. I would do occasional endurance runs with them of probably slightly longer, 6.5K up. But probably not 10K for any of those guys, and even the longer sort of 7 to 8 very occasionally. 6 a little bit more regularly, just so they are trained over distance, but probably no more than that. I do train at least, I'd say 2 of my dogs, 2 of my bitches, I have slightly different goals with, one at 10K and one at even more than that, kind of half marathon distance and beyond, like a mid distance kind of aim. So for those 2, yeah, obviously I do train them slightly differently, and I will do that distance with them, and again over distance. But yeah, for the main bulk of the sprint ones, a little bit over, but probably not as far as 10.
Another question: how often should I change the training track? Like you, do you have a loop that you do usually?
Yeah, I mean, I have a loop that we use regularly, a couple of loops that we use regularly, because of course, for distance from home, from availability, suitability, how quiet they are, and so on. As we know, there's a load of reasons why you pick a certain training track. How often you should change it? As often as you can with a good track. If you've got a load of good tracks, then great. It's a really lucky thing to have. And I'd be changing it up, nearly all the time. All the time you could. But of course, I would probably still prioritize suitability for other reasons over that. I don't have a huge concern with my dogs using the same tracks regularly. I've never seen a problem with them then going to a race. If anything, they're going to go to a race, they're just going to be more excited again because it's somewhere new. But obviously, if you can get that effect in training too, great. But my guys run at the repeat of a track several times a week sometimes, or have done at some points of the season, and I've not seen a negative effect to it. But if you've got plenty, then use plenty.
That's a good advice. A question from Mike. At which position does it make most sense to start in a mass start situation? Do you have a preference?
Difficult. Watch where everyone else picks and try and find space. They're crazy. I've had success and not so much success with mass starts. They can go either way. They are really crazy. They can be quite stressful for the dogs. I'm not always their biggest fan, unless certainly the track is very suitable for it. I've ran even the same track, and I think one was done very well, if I'm honest, and one probably wasn't done very well in terms of how much space they gave us at the start. But try and find your own space. Obviously, be aware of the course, in terms of lines and all of that. But the problem is everyone's probably going to try and do the same thing. So then I would almost, take a different view of it. It would be better to obviously maybe give ground there and then go to a different side. But just try and find your own space. And I guess know your dog, try and know what your dog's going to do. Sometimes obviously the other problem with them is we just haven't had a chance to practice them very much. So that can be difficult. But if you know your dog's going to be nervous, obviously maybe it's better to sit back and then put them in a more normal environment of passing that they probably have done before. But just, they're tricky to navigate. So just be careful and maybe stay clear if you can, and fight the battle a little bit later in the race.
And another question from her as well. How can you train head-on passing and overtaking in general as well?
Head-on passing, not something I've hugely trained, because obviously it's not something we hugely have to do, certainly close in races. I have had races where obviously parts of the track are going both ways. So in terms of that, absolutely. And the way, no different to what we've touched on already today, I would say train that is obviously pick your tracks that include some of that. So an ability to do that. If you are going to do the outright head-on passing, make sure it is a wide track. There's certainly no need to do it on obviously anything that's not a really wide track, because it won't happen in a race. You won't be put in that situation. But if you do want to do it, then you could do it with obviously a wide track. Or if it's two tracks kind of going opposite directions and you've got that trainability, then try it, see how the dog obviously reacts to it. If it is a problem and it's not responding well, use other dogs, use an experienced dog ahead of them, because then hopefully, even though there is those distractions left and right, they're going to still follow the dog ahead, because that's obviously the closer motivation, and go for it. The only other thing I'd probably say is, be prepared, hand on the line or so on. If you do need to try and watch your dog before you have to correct the line, because obviously you're going to get the most information back from that. But do be prepared and ready to correct the line prior to the issue, because obviously it's not going to be a good situation if the dog does do anything, does go across. Then obviously you don't want the other dog affected by that. So then at that point, correct, and obviously before it's an issue.
A question from Emma. Can small dogs do Canicross? We have a dedicated article about this actually on our website. We will try to post a link to it in the comments. But have you raced with a smaller dog or seen anyone?
Yeah, I've certainly seen it. Obviously, as I said, my personal dogs at home, even though we view her as small, I'm sure a lot of our the guys who are here, the athletes that are here now, probably don't view Nova as that small, being about 20 kilos. So whilst it is for me, as I say, it's probably a medium dog to most people, I guess. I've ran with certainly family, like a Cocker Spaniel. 5+ kilos lighter again, with some success. He was really keen, and ran great. And obviously I've seen it a lot more, certainly with great success in some cases. So yeah, absolutely, you can. Clearly, you're not going to get the same pros in terms of the really heavy, powerful pull on good sections, but of course, you're probably going to be very kind of nimble and not have some of the problems we've touched on as well in terms of the downhill and the technical elements. And you could probably afford to run them more often as well. So obviously, I've said for myself as an athlete, in terms of the aching, the recovery, obviously, if you're somebody that wants to run with the dog all the time or a lot of the time, not motivated to run on your own, you want that companion, then they're probably a great choice in terms of you being able to have them in harness, nearly all your runs or most of your runs. And not get any kind of negative, if we want to call them that, effects of that physically.
Yeah, I run with small dogs myself, and I think it's that part of it is great.
Yeah, that would be nice, that bit.
Yeah. A question from Linda. Do you ever do break Canicross training sessions in which you lean a bit more into the belt, or do you always run full speed in training?
Yeah, no, I will do it. I will do some, as it's almost like the stopgap between, as I spoke about, obviously what I view there, half harness walks as kind of full max strength type on that kind of strength speed continuum, and then obviously moving into resisted Canicross type runs would obviously be building them that strength for back end of races or getting them a little bit used to what they're going to experience on hills. So that it's not a shock to them to experience and to feel that, because otherwise, if they're used to running really, really easy trails and then you hit a hill and they're suddenly like, what is this? And obviously a lot of the time, if our other training is bike and scooter, that's probably faster training for them. So I will do it. I won't do loads of it again because it's just managing it. I mean, you even more so than as I touched on earlier, you are then going to get the hit in those certain muscle groups that are going to take that. The dog's probably trying to put the same power down. They're trying to put the same effort in, and that power's got to go somewhere. So if you're breaking it, just be aware that you are using your body as a human brake, and it will have an effect somewhere. It will probably ache, and hopefully just ache, and we can recover from it. But there's obviously a little bit of an injury risk there if we're doing too much of it, or in anywhere where it's not safe to do it really. But yeah, I do include it a little bit.
Mm-hmm. A question from Peter again. Do you feel we need to do more to encourage the younger generation to have a go at the sport?
Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Anything we can do with the younger generation, I think everyone agrees that. It's probably the one thing that everybody can agree on is that, we want new people into the sport, new youngsters into the sport, for a variety of reasons to develop the sport. Obviously, the health of the kids. I'm massive on that. I've always had an interest on it in my job, in terms of sort of health for kids and obviously the long-term athlete development side of it as well. Obviously, I love it for my kids to be active and to experience sport and everything I believe it can give people. So yeah, anything I think we can do is good. I think as with everything in the sport, it probably is growing. It's just growing slowly. But I think, yeah, if there's things we can do, be that us as athletes encouraging it. I mean, I've always got time for youngsters, if they see me at a race, some will know they've done it, and they want to chat to me, like it's cool, I've loved having pictures with them and that, and hopefully all athletes sort of feel the same about that. And then, yeah, race organizers putting on the races for them, even if they're in a real kind of fun way, just to get them out and get them encouraged to be brought along by parents and so on, then yeah, I think that's can only be seen as a good thing.
Good. We have a few other questions here as well, but some of them are we have already touched on either on this live stream or in the podcast. And if you want more information about Canicross, it's also possible to visit the magazine part on our website, nonstopdogwear.com. There we have a lot of articles about how you can get started, the gear you need, and so on. So maybe it's about time to draw a winner of some of the new products that we got recently, the twin shorts and also the tech tee. My colleague will help me draw a winner, but we can quickly go through it. We mentioned a bit already, Ben, but you have tried the tech tee, a very light and comfortable t-shirt.
Yeah, love a tech tee. There's going to be a lucky winner. Yeah, so I'm sure they'll enjoy it too.
And you'll try the twin shorts later today.
Yeah, I'll have a look at those when I get home.
Yeah, we're excited to hear what you think about it. I think we have a winner, Eliana Bisson. I'm not sure how to spell your surname, but if you can send us a message on Facebook with your contact information and take a look at the product pages for the Canicross twin shorts and the tech tee and pick your size, then we can send you your new kit. And we plan to have more live streams in the time to come. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, please sign up to our newsletter to get the latest news. And we have to say thanks to you, Ben, for joining us today.
Thank you very much. No, it's been a pleasure to talk to you and answer the questions. Yeah, really enjoyed my time.
Thank you so much, and talk to you later. Good luck on the competition season.
Thank you. Speak to you soon.
Yeah, bye.